topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask Good Questions podcast, broadcasting live every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time on W4CY Radio at W4CY.com. This week and every week, we will reach for a higher purpose in money and life, as well as a focus on health and wellness. Now, let's join your host, Benita Bell Anderson, as together we start with Asking Good Questions.
Hello and welcome to the Ask Good Questions podcast. So excited that you're here today. We have a wonderful guest today that is going to enlighten you with some very important things that sometimes we might even not be thinking about. So with that, I would like to invite my guest to the proverbial podcast stage. Her name is Linda Grizzly, like the bear, right?
That's right.
So Linda is a personal finance educator, and she's also a motivational speaker, and she is the creator of something she calls Me Money, or the Me Money Method, and it's a mindset-first approach. I'm seeing that more and more these days, a mindset-first approach that helps women stop putting themselves in their own budget last. So that's basically what we're going to be talking about today, is how a lot of times women put themselves last. She is a former teen mom who went back to college at 48 and built a multi-six-figure career in financial services. And now she helps women gain clarity and confidence and control with their money without lectures or judgment. So with that, Linda, I just want to welcome you to the podcast.
Thanks, Anita. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So, this podcast is all about asking good questions. So I hope that we're going to not disappoint today with asking some very good questions. So let me ask you, do you have anything to add to that as I'm asking you, like my first question? Is there anything you want to add when you think about, when did you first realize that always putting others first was costing you more than you thought?
Well, I have to say that I first realized that putting others before myself was costing me my health, and mentally and physically. I understood that first. And I think that came about during COVID times when I was trying to juggle everything. I had two elderly parents that I was partly taking care of. It was complicated and it was just a lot. Like, I had a lot going on. And there was one point in time where I ended up hanging up on my mother on the phone. And my husband was like, "What is wrong with you?" And I was like, I was dealing with my dad. Like I said, they're separate. I was dealing with something with my dad, and like he had been in this accident, and like it was just, everything was just way too much.
Yeah.
And I realized at that point that I was putting everyone else before me, and I was trying to do it all, but I still wasn't taking care of myself. So I think that's when I realized, like mentally and physically, what was happening. But it wasn't actually until a little while later that I realized that I was putting everybody else before myself financially as well. Um, and that actually came about in a completely different way than you would think, because it came about because I put my husband on a budget. And I can tell you more about that story, but I don't want to just start talking and take you completely off track just yet. So I will stop there and let you ask me the next question.
Well, it's kind of the truth behind that is that if you don't take care of yourself, then you're not going to be, eventually it's going to catch up to you and you're not going to be any good to anybody. So that is a truth that I have learned again and again and again, that you have to take care of yourself first. So tell me this, what do you think are some of the subtle warning signs that you're giving too much financially or emotionally, where you suddenly realize that you're on the way to burnout?
Well, I think like physically and mentally, the signs are there. I mean, I knew they were there, and most people know that they're there. They just don't do anything about it until something happens. And that happens with a lot of people in the workplace too, like burnout in
Yeah.
the workplace. Like
Yeah.
they know it's there, but they just keep pushing through. And I can tell you that I've talked in the last 6 months to probably 5 different people, women, who in the workplace ended up actually in the hospital from stress and overwork and just everything that was going overwhelm, everything that was going on in their lives. Not necessarily that they've ended up in the hospital in 6 months, but in the last 6 months, but people that I've talked to in the last 6 months, like it's more prevalent than you would think. And it's not like you don't know. You know, you just don't do anything about it because you just keep pushing through.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so it's really it needs to be talked about more because we need to know that we're not alone and that this is happening and that we need to do something about it before those types of things happen.
I'm thinking of personal trainers and different people that are in the physical education, just educating people about physical, about exercise. They a lot of times say if you don't make time for like in particular exercise, then eventually you're going to have to, because your health will deteriorate to the point where you then are nursing who knows what. But I'm just wondering if you think that selflessness, if you consider yourself being selfless, if that can be a form of self-neglect. What do you think?
It is. It is absolutely a form of self-neglect. And I think that it's hard because, you always hear the whole, put your oxygen mask on first. People repeat that. It's from the airplane, but people repeat it all the time. But the thing is that when you're in the thick of it, like you don't know where your oxygen mask is. Because I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to take time for myself because anytime I would take time for myself, I would feel guilty because there are all these other things that I needed to be doing. I had so much responsibility. And so for me to take time for myself, there was just so much emotion around that I couldn't even relax when I tried because of all the other things that were going on in my head.
Yeah. Well, you make me think of my upper, I grew up in a wonderful family, but the women in my family were typically, they were basically serving and giving all the time. And I'm wondering what role you would say culture or upbringing play in maybe, is it possible that we feel obligated to overgive?
Absolutely. It's definitely part of how we grew up, how our society is, just the norms, what we've been taught and the norms and just everything. It's part of of that, but it's also part of our nature because as women, we're nurturers,
Nurturing. Yeah.
So it's part of who we are. But we're nurturers, but we're also trying to do all these other things and we forget to nurture ourselves.
There's another thing I'm thinking of is, um, have you ever, I'm just wondering if you have any stories or anything around. I was wondering if when helping somebody is actually enabling them. I'm just thinking of, I've recognized that a few times when it's like it's not really doing them any good. So what would you say about helping somebody actually, being a form of enabling them so that they're not taking care of themselves? Where's that line? Where's the line?
Yeah, that is I know that very well. And I'm still not clear on where that line is. It's a gray, fuzzy area, right? Because it's also going to depend on the person and the situation as to where that line really is. So it sounds like it's easy, right? Stop enabling. You can see when you're doing too much for someone and it's just letting them perpetuate the situation
Yeah,
that they're in because you're taking care of things, right?
right.
But then there's also times when that person really needs your support and they're trying really hard, but it's hard sometimes to define or to really know where the difference is, like when you're just enabling and when you're supporting. So I think that it again, you have to take a step back out and get yourself like out of the situation. This is another reason why stepping out and giving yourself that self-care, taking time to step away and clear your mind can help you look at it hopefully from a different perspective than just being always in the thick of it, so that you can see, am I enabling or am I supporting? And I'm guilty of both.
Right. Well, I'm not going to go into the story, but I'm thinking of two sisters in my neighborhood who are taking care of their father as well as an auntie. They're both, and the auntie's husband has died, but these two sisters are taking care of both. And the auntie is actually terrible. They have uncovered all kinds of stuff around finances that she just has not taken care of. And so they actually called me one day because they were so overwhelmed that they were like frozen. So I came in and I looked at the big situation and just sat down with them and just listened and was going, okay, so why don't you do this and do this and do that and try. And so they were very grateful just for a little bit of support and someone on the outside to talk to. But because that is a situation that there was a financial situation there that was just a train wreck, like taxes not having been paid and all kinds of things. But what would you say about, in what ways does putting yourself last show up in your bank account? I'm sure sometimes if things aren't being paid, it can turn into a real problem real fast.
Yeah, and that's not usually the conversation I have around putting yourself last as far as that goes. But I think that the having the things not being paid and not having not having taxes filed and bills paid is actually more common than people realize, of people that are getting older, right? So that this is another reason why it's important to have somebody that you trust, that's a family member that can handle finances for you, and getting those powers of attorney and things that we talk about in financial and estate planning together, because it's really hard when you're older and you're starting to lose some capacity to give up things, because give up power, because you already know that when you're at that transition point, you already know that you're kind of losing it, and you feel like if you're giving it away, then you're losing it all. But if you can give someone that power before you start to lose capacity, it's actually easier to give that power, not that they're going to do it right then, but give them the ability to have the power later when it's needed to take that on. It can be really helpful, because the thing that most people don't realize is when a person starts to lose their capacity, their memory, Alzheimer's, dementia, whatever you want to call it, they don't necessarily know that they are. They think that they are much more capable than they are, and much more present than they are. Um, and you can't tell them that they're not.
Right. One of the, I've got a couple of professional designations, and one of them was a whole section on as we get older and seniors losing control. And so you're making me think of this whole thing that I went through in this training. But it's really true, because I've seen it in my own family. As people get older, there's less and less control, like if the car keys are taken away. And then, and I actually had to tell a client not too long ago, you need to get your kids involved in helping you with your finances, because he was forgetting things. So what do why don't you tell me that story? You were saying you had another story, I think was with your husband. Was that it?
Yeah, it's about how I discovered that I was putting myself last financially. And this has more to do with money personalities. But I am in the financial business, so I handle our household finances, and we're a blended marriage. We got married older in life, and so we don't really control each other. We have mixed stuff, but it's we kind of do our own thing.
Us too.
But I
I'm there
I
with you.
realized I realized that my husband was spending more money than he realized he was spending, right? And I was like, you go on this trip, you go on that trip, you do this, you do that. And he's like, it's not that much, I get a cabin with the guys and like, it's, we split it and it's, and I'm like, yeah, but you've got to pay for your boat and your boat insurance and your gas and your fishing stuff. And like, it's a lot. So I said, I'm giving you a budget. Like I'm just putting you on a budget and you get this much money. Each paycheck is yours and you get to spend it however you want. And but you have to save it because you need to pay for the trip later. So you have to like live within your means within this budget. Simple, absolutely super simple budgeting, like just this one little piece of it. I'm not even, talking about the rest of it, just one little piece. And the whole point of it was not to restrict him, but it was to make him see how much money he was actually spending.
Yeah.
Right. So we did this for a couple months and I came back to him and I said, oh, I forgot to say, he asked me, are you going to put yourself on a budget too? And I said, sure, I'll give myself the same exact budget, same household, same lifestyle, whatever, same thing. So I'll do the same thing. He's like, okay. So I came back to him a couple months later. I was like, how's it going? And he said, it's fine. And I'm like, fine. What do you mean by fine? And he's like, it's okay. And I go, well, do you feel restricted? Do you feel like it's not enough money? How do you feel? He's like, oh, he's like, I feel fine. And he's like, I'm making better decisions. I'm like, oh, tell me more. And he said, well, like for instance, I saw this golf shirt that I wanted. And normally I would just buy the golf shirt, but he has a whole closet full of golf shirts. And he's like, but I thought about it and I was like, if I buy this golf shirt, I won't have this money to put towards my golf trip. So I'm not going to buy the shirt. I'm just going to save it for the trip. And I said, well, do you feel bad that you didn't get to buy the shirt? He's like, no, I don't need the shirt. I'm like, but you would have bought it if if you didn't have this budget. He said, yeah, I would have totally bought it. And I would have gone on the trip too. But now, so he's making better choices. He doesn't care that he doesn't have the shirt. And so I was like, that's great. This is working even better than I thought it would. Because my whole idea was just to make him see, like, you're actually spending a lot of money. So then the flip side of it was that every time I would spend money on myself, would feel guilty. I would just be like, oh gosh, I shouldn't buy that because, I'm the planner, I'm the saver, I'm the one who's like, this should go, this should replenish my emergency fund that we spent on the windows for the house, or this should go into my retirement fund. Like I shouldn't be spending this. I can't afford to go on a girls' trip. All these things I was telling myself, but I was the only one telling me that.
Yeah.
So now I had the same money and I'm using like these little packets of these samples of this stuff I got for face cream for facials that I picked up from this little store. And I'm using it. I'm like, oh, this stuff is fantastic. And I'm like, I would never spend this much money on myself. And then I'm like, wait a minute. I have the money. I have it set aside. It's my money. It's my me money. This is where me money came from. I can buy this.
Yeah.
And so I bought it. I bought the whole thing. I bought like the day and the night. And I spent like what I was like, this is a ton of money. But it was my money. It was already set aside for me. And I didn't have to answer to myself. I didn't have to answer to myself because it was already there. And it was like mind blowing for me too. So once I realized this, and I thought about all the financial plans that I had done, all the people that I had talked to, where you come in and you talk about cash flow. This is what's coming in. This is what's going out. This is what we do for this. You might put going out to eat. You might put, vacations on there, but there's never a line item that says this is my money, my me money that I could spend on me. It's never on there. And I was like, this is mind blowing. So I started implementing this and telling other people about it. And I found that it works with almost any money, with all the money personalities. Almost every person is like, wow, this is just really giving me a framework around what I spend on myself. So for me, it allowed me to put myself first and as a line item on my budget and say, I am allowed to spend money on myself.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what would you say about, so if somebody's constantly giving, how does that show up affecting a long-term goal like retirement?
Yeah, so
I was just thinking, the retirement the emergency fund, like but I've seen so many times where somebody's taken money out of retirement because of this and that. And I'm going, no, find another way or put it off or whatever. Don't put your retirement money at risk. How do you think it shows up for retirement?
It definitely shows up. Let me tell you a story about somebody that I know. This person that I know had a decent job and lived, you know, middle class, nice, decent suburb home, and had this nice job and was doing well, and had this sister that also had a nice job but had a lesser home, and maybe her husband didn't work, and so they always lived very poor, and they just made different decisions with their life, right? So this person, let's just say his name is Bob. So I'm just pulling a name out of the air. So this person is Bob, and Bob is going to visit his mother out of state, and his sister wants to go. So Bob is buying his sister tickets to go visit the mother because they're poor and whatever. The truth behind this, behind the scenes, is that Bob is not putting money into his retirement funds. He's spending his money. Well, as the sister is putting money into her retirement fund this whole time, which is why they're living poor, because she's putting the money in there. So guess what happens? Bob, who's been giving his money to his sister to help her all these years, when it comes to retirement time, guess who gets to retire first?
Yeah. That is so easy to have happen. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Well, yeah. I'm just hoping that some of these things are going to help people recognize maybe some of these conversations in themselves. And how do you think guilt or fear keep people from setting healthy boundaries? I mean, would that be a case of setting boundaries? I mean, I would say he's not setting boundaries for himself, right? He's not putting saving for retirement high enough on his own list.
Yeah. He's not. He's not taking care of himself, but he's
Right.
also he's not spending the money on himself. He's spending it on someone else. He's being very generous and giving
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
helping out someone that he feel like needs support, you
Right.
know. And maybe he is enabling. We talked about that before, because they're living this lifestyle because that's the lifestyle that they're choosing.
Yeah.
It's not that they can't do more. They're choosing that lifestyle. But there's a lot of things in there. There's boundaries, there's all that.
Well, what are some other examples that you can think of like missed opportunities that people face when they don't invest in themselves? And retirement, saving for the future, that's part of investing in yourself, right?
Absolutely. So when I talk about me money and putting yourself on as a line item on your budget and paying yourself first, it's kind of like the same thing,
Yep.
but it's with your
That's it.
personal finances.
Mm-hmm.
So it's allowing yourself to enjoy money now if you're a person that's a saver and always wants to save it for later. But if you're a spender, it's allowing you to put a container around it to say, like, I'm allowed to spend this, but I need to make my choices. Like, is my money worthy of this purchase? So that it
Mm-hmm.
allows you to have freedom within a certain amount and just make those better choices, so that you can be sure that you're putting away for retirement and saving money elsewhere, so that you're not just spending everything.
Right. Have you ever seen when someone does burn out, have you ever seen that result in like a career setback with any of
Oh,
the people?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's all it's all about finding that. We talk about work-life balance all the time, but really
Mm-hmm.
there's no balance. I mean, and it's what you focus on is what you get, right?
Yeah.
It's just, you talk about there's those videos where you watch where, like, you say focus on how many things are red, and then like a gorilla walks through the
Yeah.
screen. You know what I'm talking about? And then I don't even I don't know exactly how it goes, but and then
Yeah.
you're like, how many things were
How
red? And
many
you're
how
like,
many white
"Six."
people, how many white shirts, how many black shirts, and then the gorilla walks through. Yeah.
Exactly, whatever. And people don't see the gorilla, right?
Yeah.
So if you're not looking for it and you don't see it, your
Mhm.
your brain is going to pay attention to what you're paying attention to. So you have to make yourself pay attention to these things, and make yourself find time for yourself and for self-care and all of those things.
Well, you would hope that people, like from this conversation today, I'm hoping that people might see warning signs that they're headed that way. Because I know, like I went through a terrible divorce about 25 years ago, and then I've been married for the second time now for 15 years. But I know that depleted emotional reserves. I mean, there was a whole lot of emotions around that divorce. So do you have any examples of when you're on the way down with the emotions impacting your relationships? Do you have any ideas or stories around when what, like I sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I would have realized some things. What do you think? Do you think that there's some ways that you can stop this in its tracks? How can you make sure? How can you know? It's like, oh.
I am far from the expert on this, but I have to say that you have to keep an open mind to yourself and really just look internally, because it's all going to come from inside. And you have to really think about how you're thinking, how you're feeling, why you're feeling it. And 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 sometimes, you need a coach or a therapist or somebody to help you work through that, to figure that out, because sometimes you can't do it on your own. You need someone to talk to you about it.
Right.
Like, I talk about money stories and money mindset and all that stuff all the time. And just a couple of months ago, I was having a conversation with someone and they asked me one question and I answered it and I was like, light bulb, because I was like, oh my God, that just explains something to me about something in my life that I hadn't even thought about yet. But because I'm so used to now thinking about things like that, as soon as those words came out of my mouth, I connected the dots. I was like, that's why I'm doing that. And that's why, because I'm telling him a story about something that happened in my childhood. And I was like, okay, that's exactly why I'm doing what I'm doing. It's just, you really have to just get inside your own head and start understanding what makes you tick. And most people don't do that.
Right. I think for me, it's taken a lifetime of trial and error, going to programs, just doing all kinds of different things. I remember right after my divorce and having to restart myself financially and all that, going to a therapist. And all I wanted to do was throw the garbage can at him, because he was like, well, how do you feel? And I'm like, I feel like I'm angry.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about how you can take back your power. The first thing I'm thinking of is, what's the difference between generosity that's healthy and generosity that's harmful to you?
Wow, you are asking good questions. That's a really good question. I don't think that, again, like, I hate to say this, but there's not ever a one good answer for everybody. But I feel like as long as you are aware of your finances, I mean, you know this, you work in finance, like as long as you know where everything is going and that you have all the right things and you have a strategy for your giving, whether it's to your sister, whether it's to whatever charity you want, or whatever it's for, as long as you have a strategy and something behind it so that you understand where it fits into your overall picture, that's what's important.
Mm-hmm. What do you think are some, so if somebody says, oh, I need to make some changes, what would you say are some practical ways to set boundaries for yourself without feeling selfish?
Well, I think the biggest thing is take it in small chunks, right?
Yeah.
So I I know I have like this all or nothing personality, and I'm like, I'm either doing it or I'm not doing it. And I
Yeah.
need to stop that. I need to actively stop that and say, like, okay, I'm just gonna do this one piece. You know what I mean? Like, for instance, I'm usually one of those people who's like, either I'm going to the gym regularly or I'm just not doing any exercise at all. Because I feel like, oh, a 15-minute walk, what's that gonna do? But you know what? If I take a 15-minute walk every couple of days, it all adds up, right? Every little
Mm-hmm.
bit
Yeah,
counts.
absolutely.
So just remember, every little bit counts. Take it in small chunks. work towards what it is that you feel like you need to do. Don't feel like you have to just transform overnight. Everything's a process.
Well, don't you think it's also around how you frame it? Like how can you reframe self-care so it feels like a necessity and not a luxury?
Yeah. Well, and that's part of the financially the me money method. Like it's part of the process. Like you just set up the process and it's just there. And then it is self-care. It's not a luxury. It's just a thing that you have. And I think that by creating that structure, I mean, it's kind of like just the habit thing, right? We have all of the books about like the good habits and the tiny things that you do every day. It's that same sort of thing where if you just start, you just have to start at whatever piece you want to start with.
So how so if you say, okay, I'm going to say no, sometimes saying no is hard, but it's what you really need to do. How can saying no actually strengthen a relationship then instead of harming? Sometimes, like with your spouse, I think you make choices, right? And so have you ever had times when you've said no and you found that saying no to something actually strengthened your relationship?
Absolutely. I think the hardest part about saying no is not the saying no and the other person, it's how you feel about yourself when you say no. I mean, think
Mhm.
about it. When you say no to someone, is it really that they're that upset or that you just feel really guilty
Yeah.
because
Sometimes
you
I
said
think,
no?
yeah, you might. I mean, what I'm thinking of is FOMO, fear of missing out. Uh, I have found that. And so a lot of times I have to just step back and say what's really important here.
Yeah.
So, do you think there's a way to track and measure the personal cost of overgiving?
I think the only way that you can track and measure that is by your own feelings. I don't think there's another way.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's gonna be and it's gonna be different for every single person. I keep saying that, but it is, right? Because if you're talking about there is a joy in giving, like there absolutely is a joy in giving, but there's also guilt when you don't. And sometimes there's guilt when you do because
Mhm.
sometimes you're giving and you know that you're hurting yourself by doing it.
Mhm.
And
So I want to ask you, in my intro of you mentioned there was a little piece about being a teen mom and then completely rebuilding yourself into a successful grown woman here. Where no, so I'm going to give you a little story about myself. So that divorce 25 years ago, I characterized myself as being curled up in a corner, sucking my thumb, just completely blown away. And I finally realized my three daughters were also hurting. And so I needed to restart myself. And so I know the day that I said, damn it, I'm not going to let this destroy me. I'm going to find a way. And that was the point where I started rebuilding my life and I had to, completely redo my finances and everything.
yeah.
So, do you tell me a little bit about that process? I mean, if you were a teenage mom and then how did you go through your process? What do you think when you step back and look at your life?
I made a lot of bold moves in my life. Being a teen mom was one of those. I mean, deciding to have a child at 16 is a huge bold move. And I didn't think of it that way then, right? Because everyone looks down on you and everyone,
Yeah.
is like always questioning you. And then even as you get older, when you meet people and you're like, "Oh, this is my daughter," and they're like, "How old is she?" And then they're like doing math. You can see them doing. I
Yeah,
can't
you
tell you
can
how
see
many
me
times I
doing
saw people doing math. Then, that's crazy. But that was a bold move. And I look back at it now and I'm like, hell yeah, that was a bold move. And like I'm like, I should be super proud of that. And I am. And then, I did get married, and then I had more kids, and then I was a mom trying to hold everything together. And then I got divorced, and I did the same as you. I had to rebuild. And I'm at that time, I'm not in the financial services business. I'm talking to my husband's financial guy and the CPA that he's been working with, and they won't talk to each other. And then nobody's giving me any answers. Nobody cares about me and my piddly little money.
We're like
So
sisters in this.
yeah. And I'm like, just, what do I do with this? Now that I have this, like this little bit, what do I do with it? How do I get ahead? What do I do? And so, that was a whole story in itself. And I found some help, but it wasn't the help that I needed. And it was okay. But really, it was just somebody selling me stuff to make money. And yeah, it was an investment, but I feel like I just didn't know who to go to. I didn't have a person to trust. And so I just figured things out. And that's one of the reasons why I'm so passionate about financial wellness and talking about finance and getting the message out that there are resources out there for people, so that they aren't like you or me, just because I'm sure you probably were the same way, just like trying to figure it out on your own. I mean, did you have
Well, I
people
didn't
that were
have
supporting
me.
you?
I didn't 25 years ago, I didn't have somebody that was like me.
Right, exactly.
I felt
I didn't
very
either.
much I felt very much alone.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that's one of my goals, is to make sure that people aren't alone when they're going through that stuff. But yeah, and I mean, bold moves, yeah, walking away from a 23-year marriage after, I was 45 at the time, so over half my life I was married by that
Yeah.
point.
Yep.
That was a bold move. I didn't know what I was doing. I had to recreate myself, decided to go back to school at 48, get my bachelor's degree, and then still didn't know what I was going to do. And things just came about in, the way they came about. But when I look back, like every bold move that I made, and every obstacle that I overcame, and every like opportunity that I thought I lost, actually was was a good thing, was a silver lining to help me get to
You
where I
can,
am.
yes, you can look back and you can say, oh, that actually was, yeah, you can see
Yeah,
it,
can see
can't
it
you?
in hindsight. Yeah. Like there was this
So,
job that I wanted it so bad, and I was like one of the
yeah,
top two, and they were making me do like all these different interviews, and I'd had to do a presentation. It was like between me and this one other person, I was much more qualified than this other person. And the other person got the job, and I was like devastated. But that was right before I got into the career of financial services. And I was like, thank goodness I didn't get that job. Thank
yeah,
goodness I did not get that job,
yeah,
because I would still be stuck in that in over there in doing that thing and not making, the money that I wanted to make, that I deserved to make, and I'd still be
yeah.
undervaluing myself, and I wouldn't be helping the people that I'm helping now.
We're not really talking about purpose today, but that's one of the things that I do a lot of with financial education, is talking about what's your purpose for your life. And that was what I had to do way back in the day, when I was like, where am I going? What am I doing now? And so what you're really talking about is really finding that. And I think that those that can find a purpose in their life that really gives them joy, it can really help. So
Absolutely.
we're running out of time. It always happens.
Oh my
So what small steps, for those that are listening, that are thinking about this, what small steps do you think you could take to start investing in yourself, both financially and emotionally?
I would say the one thing that I would tell anybody to do is to think about where they want to be in the future, whether
Yeah.
that's financially or with a job, or in their personal life, whatever it is. Think about what that is, and then take at least one small step every single day towards that goal,
Yeah.
whatever it is. Even
Yeah.
if it's sending one email,
Yeah.
or making one phone call, or spending an hour researching something, you know, um, just do something every day to work towards that version of you that you want to become.
Right. Right. And don't beat yourself up, I would say. Give yourself credit. Celebrate those little teeny tiny wins, right?
Yes, give
So,
yourself the same compassion you would give somebody else. Think about
yeah,
if it was your best friend or your sister talking to you and saying,
yeah,
"This is where I'm at, this is whatever." Give yourself the compassion you would give them.
right, right. Well, can you think of anything else about break, like somebody's going, oh, I can see myself in this. What would you say would be some strategies to help break the cycle of always putting yourself last? Maybe saying no more.
Saying no more, setting boundaries. And boundaries, if I could get into a whole other spiel about boundaries, and I don't want to do that because we're running out of time, but look up the real definition of boundaries, because boundaries sometimes aren't what you think they are.
Mhm.
Sometimes you're thinking about setting boundaries for other people or other things, but really you got to set your own boundaries.
Right. So, well, talking just a little bit more about boundaries, how do you think you can involve family and friends in supporting? So, if you're saying, okay, I'm going to have these new boundaries, I'm going to have new ways of being. How can you get those that are closest to you involved in supporting you? What do you think?
Communication is always the answer to almost everything. Communicating, but that doesn't mean that they're going to understand or that they are going to be supportive. It doesn't mean that. And you know what? That's okay. It's not their life, it's yours.
Yeah. Well, how do you think you remind yourself? I mean, I can tell you so many times when I've like restarted, but restarted, but every time I was a little bit further ahead and I didn't realize it. But how can you remind yourself, that you are making progress and that taking care of yourself? What would you say would be strategies around reminding yourself to take care of yourself so that you can benefit those that you need or want to give to?
Every day is the first day of the rest of your life. You get a fresh start every day
Yeah.
to do whatever, right? That doesn't mean that your past is erased. It means you've learned from your past and it's a stepping stone to your future.
Yeah.
Everything that you do is about becoming the next best version of yourself. So even if you have setbacks, all those times you restarted, all the times I restarted, those were all parts of us becoming our next best self.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we are going to run out of time, but I would love to have you. Can you summarize the Me Money method and just
Yes.
exactly, how what it is and how it came about? And you
Yeah.
talked a little
So
bit about how it came about, but just maybe talk a
it,
little bit about what
yeah,
it is.
it came about because I put my husband on a budget and then I put myself on the same budget. It was mind blowing for us because we both were able to, it leaned into our personalities, and that's the key part of it, because it's a financial strategy, but it's a mindset shift because it takes your money personality and it gives a framework to it. So that's why it works with any money personality, because there's a framework to it. It's taking a set amount of money and putting it aside just for you, and then that's the money that you can spend on yourself and you don't answer to anyone. If you want to buy it, you buy it. It's your money. You can't go outside of that though. You have to live within your me money means, but you don't have to answer to for me, I didn't have to answer to myself. So, and for my husband, he was just making better choices, right?
Yeah.
So, depending on where you fall in your personality, that's the key shift to it, is that it gives you a type of abundance rather than restriction, because you get to make the choices about what you value. Is this worthy of my money or not? And for instance, I was a person who could justify paying $10 for 10 different things at 10 different times, but I wasn't going to justify spending $100 on myself. So I was really probably spending the same amount of money sometimes, but I was just making a better choice rather than 10 things for $10 because it was a deal, because I could always justify that.
Well, I think you're talking
Because,
about awareness.
yeah, it is awareness. You're right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So it's an online course that you
Yeah,
take?
there's an online course I have, and it's pretty simple, and there's an easy way to do it, and then there's like a more complicated way to do it that talks about like how to figure out your cash flow. And it's all in the course. And you can figure out your money personality in there and just understand a lot more about yourself.
Okay. Well, on my website, I always have this thing that I have about information about guests. And so there will be information on the website about where to find Linda and links to all of her cool stuff. So with that, Linda, the time is gone. Crazy.
No, it went by so fast.
I know.
Thanks so much.
So thank you so much for joining us. And thank you so much for joining the Ask Good Questions podcast. And we will see you again next time.
Today's episode is over, but we did ask good questions again, didn't we? Don't miss out as we broadcast live every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Eastern Time on W4CY Radio at W4CY.com. Join Benita Bell Anderson next week for more conversations with experts on finances, retirement, behavioral finance issues, health and wellness, and more. Until then, remember to ask good questions.